Hi, welcome to my talk about Federated API Management iteration free. Oh, iteration free. We're going further actually, so you can find iteration 2 directly also in the linked videos up front. So it's from Paris last year, so we are moving on. We did some things in regards of Federated API Management, and we move further because we learned from customer projects, from discussions in the field, and this relates to the things I will show you in the next 20 minutes. So we go from governance to runtime. But before we start, some words about myself. So I'm Daniel Kocot. I'm working as a principal API consultant at Codecentric in Germany. And I'm also an API Ops Cycles facilitator. I'm an async API ambassador and TSC member. I'm a team topologies advocate, and I'm a TSC member of the Open Data Product Specification, ODPS. So you see a lot of things to do. This is possible because we have an amount of time at our company where we can put things again to the community and be part of the community. And sometimes you need things to be a team topologies advocate or an API ops cycles facilitator to get in contact with customers. So if you have questions, ask me. You find me on LinkedIn, or you can use my email address. So before we really get into the things, we at Codecentric believe that excellent designed APIs bring value to organizations and their ecosystems. That's why we focus on different topics, and Federated API Management is one of them. And we think we can achieve this if we upskill the organization as a whole. So it doesn't matter if you're just one team, the whole organization has to be upskilled, not the single little team. So a quick recap where we came from the past. So I did this first iteration in London last year, where I just thought, okay, why federation? Why is everybody talking about this? What are the concepts behind it? And is it actually something in regards of API sprawl? Could be. In the second iteration, I built it up what we call a federated framework. So a framework like some kind of blueprint, which is actually not a blueprint. It's something you can adapt. And in the end, we come to an outcome that we have a structured foundation for governed decentralization. So we can decentralize everything in regards of the platform and so on and so on. So we don't have to handle it as, we can handle it as one platform, but it will be not one platform. It will be not just one thing in the platform. The platform consists of so many decentralized things. So the federated framework, just to give it up again, has additionally 5 steps. So in the first step, we assess the current API ecosystem, look what we already have, which is really, really important because normally when we go into initiatives like talking to people about to establish the system, it's like, oh yeah, I have an old integration platform. I want to replace it by something new, something tremendous, faster, and so on and so on. But normally in bigger enterprises, it happens that there are different systems already available. So we really have to assess the current API ecosystem to say, okay, what is there? What are the technical capabilities and how we can actually move on there? So then we define and design the framework regarding to the situation. So what is really needed to get it lifted to a better end in the end? To really say, okay, is it needed to look more on the security side and so on and so on. So many, many different aspects. And what we do consists of APIs. So we really have to incorporate a method we call API thinking together with the API ops cycles. You maybe heard of them by Mariuka. So it's a long thing to really get in details and say, okay, we really have to look at APIs from a business perspective. And then on that, we build APIs according to the needs of the business. If all is clear on that, regarding the framework, we have to deploy it to the whole organization. And the fifth step is some kind of the easiest one, because we are all working in an environment where it's about success. So we really have to monitor the things to say, okay, is it giving the business a success to using this federated approach, whatever that means in your company. So it's not really clear. It's federated API management, whatever that means on the technical side. But on the other end, it's clear it combines things for the business, so they don't have to know all the details. They just get what they want. And this leads to the point where we say, okay, federation lives or fails on the runtime. So it's really important to make clear that we're working with runtime and we work with design time. So when we design things, we're in this design mode. The runtime is totally different to that. And this leads actually to the runtime dilemma, what I call it, where I have to think about fragmented runtime behaviors. When we look at APIs in a federated approach, they're exposed through a mix of gateways, event brokers, service meshes, or any kind of technology that brings APIs to life. And it's a mix. So it's not clear what is the upcoming ecosystem or what is the main component of the ecosystem. And this is where we have to kick in with federation. So we looking, normally when you talk about federation, you look from a central point of aspect. But having the central point of aspect, just saying, okay, we have a centralized management platform, blah, 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 it lacks on how you can influence actual API interactions at runtime, because there's actually more. So it's quite easy to say that we really have to align federation, that it works with the interaction behavior that is available, not to the infrastructure, because normally when you talk with people in this context of federation, it's always about infrastructure. It is more, it's about the interaction within or with the systems of involved in this federated aspects. Before we go any further, we should ask ourselves, what is actually an API? To be honest, this is, for me, the first question I ask when I get into new customer situations. Because the term API means something different looking at it from the past when it is now today. And it's normally related to technologies. An API, when we talk with customers, I can only tell for the DACH region where I'm located, it's always equals REST. Fine. But an API can be even more. So we really have to think about, and looking from this interaction perspective, we can bring in the so-called API interaction patterns, where we have a resource, we have with a touch of hypermedia maybe, we have the tunnel, we have query, and event-based. Now we look a little bit further onto each interaction pattern to make clear and understandable what it actually means. So when we look on the resource side, in combination with hypermedia, it's quite clear that we have a structured resource. We are using standard HTTP methods, but normally there's not hypermedia involved there. So this is the standard use case. We exchange resources over the wire. With federation in place, we need to really make clear that there is a clear ownership. We have to enable local gateway autonomy and support consistent access and caching. So one of the things when you think about resource coming from this context of REST as an architecture principle. And one of the principles of REST is caching. So really have to make clear that we use this to bring value in a federated context. And with federation, there come challenges. We have to align on resource models, naming conventions, and adopt shared hypermedia semantics. Not just say, okay, there are links involved. To say, okay, you can link from this resource to another or something like that. It must be clear what it means, because for the backend, it's a lot of things to really think about there. Looking at the tunnel. Yeah, the tunnel is the old thing we know from the past. Most of us work with SOAP, so gRPC over HTTP. Yeah, something that's done from your side, which looks like calling a local endpoint. With Federated, in the context there, we can reduce a lot of things there because it's simplifying using a tunnel, this integration aspect. So we don't have to think about upfront design effort. So when we design RESTful APIs or resources, it's really, really hard. We really have to focus on the design aspects. And having something like a tunnel running in the lower level of type of things. So really say, okay, these are APIs running within a bounded context. We can allow fast exposure of functionality. So because it's clear for this bounded context what is meant by that. But we also have, again, challenges. It's some kind of weakened observability. We obscure the intent. And we have a demand of strong runtime policy control. So we really have to focus on if this getting with the policies around us. Looking at query, it's, yeah, somehow the things when I do filtering by using OData, or even I can use filters with REST. I can also do GraphQL when we bring something like a technology into the place. What we do is reduce the overfetching and increase the flexibility so people can do what they want. From a federated impact, or from the federated side, it's actually so that we can enable schema reuse. We can use it for cross-domain aggregation. And we can have a consumer-driven access. So people decide what they really need. If this is a good thing, we have to decide on our own if this is a good thing. So this is also the challenge behavior. So we really have to do runtime validation so that we know, okay, what comes in is totally fine. And with this, just somebody is asking something, we really have to invest in our backend. It now becomes more complex on the backend side. And it becomes complicated in regards of policies because we have more to be fine-grained there. We need a lot of policies to make clear what is allowed and what not, and what combinations are possible and what not. So it's really a matter of fact to really look at these things, say, okay, what's the common use case? Is this something we have already in the organization? What is the impact when we go this on the federated level, and what could be the challenges? Looking from that perspective, also towards the event-based stuff, we have this common use case, pub/sub, event brokers, webhooks. So we do synchronous styles, and we have their federated impact. So events decoupled from domains. We scale with autonomy, and we enable loose coupled cross-teams workflows. So everybody who can access the topic can do what they want with it. The challenge is that we have a complicated schema governance, reduced traceability because it's not clear who's using this. Also, we have a schema registry available, and we know by broker changes who is using the broker actually. So we need ownership models. We need required clear trust around this. So to make it really clear, to make this what we see there more easy, it is on time to bring the interaction canvas into the context. So as I mentioned earlier, I'm an API ops cycles facilitator. So we use at Codecentric within our own method, what we call API thinking. A lot of the canvases we get from the API ops cycles. And the interaction canvas is at that point the best way to really tackle the needs of an enterprise business side. To really say, okay, what's needed? What do you want to expect from us with the consumer side, and really get it on paper. Because we need a shared understanding to know what is actually happening across autonomous teams. We also need to have a design runtime alignment. So it's really clear that things will happen on the design time. And then we have to think about consistent behavior. So it's clear that it should happen all the same on every domain, gateway site, whatever. So it's really consistent. So every interaction is handled the same. And there is actually also one point where it leads to is actually the pattern-aware governance. So really have to think governance from the pattern point of view to really make clear, okay, we're doing resource. This has other governance components than if we use some kind of tunnel or event-based or whatever. So we really have to focus on this. By using the interaction canvas, it helps us to really capture the interaction types, the inputs, the outputs, the rules from the consumer view that are really needed. So that really can focus then, if we have all the insights from the consumer side and the expectations so far, how we can bring them to life. Because federation needs a lot of metadata to really work out, because we are in a federated mesh-like context. So it's about having metadata for routing, validation, policy enforcement across domains, and so on and so on and so on, to really go into the runtime platform requirements. As mentioned earlier, we have different interaction patterns. So we need multi-pattern interaction support. So every interaction we are using in the organization should be covered by the platform. And platform is not just one tool. So we really have to focus how to really build up the platform. And one thing that could help us there is the platform canvas. To really understand what are the producers, what is happening on the producer side, what is the expectations on the consumer side, what are the metrics, do we have already a cost model, what about monetization, and so on and so on, and how can we facilitate that into that. And we can do this now for every pattern type, and we can do a thing. We can go there and say, okay, we have sync patterns and we have async patterns, to make it more clear what was actually have to be used. So we need metadata to make it clear. So on the sync side is different to the things on the async side. And the async patterns applies to resource, query, tunnel, and we need some things to the gateway. So apply policies, route requests dynamically, and so on and so on and so on. And it's the same for having use of metadata in the so-called async style. So routing there is not per request, but is on the publish subscribe contract level. So we really have to think about that. So, and having an example, it's like, oh yeah, it's X minus interaction minus pattern double dot resource on the sync side, to make it clear in the contract what it is. And we can do the same in the payload for an async pattern. With all this, we also have to think about security and policy. So we really have to be pattern aware what is happening. So enforce at the verb level and field level by having a resource and query stuff. So very thinking about what is actually needed to do token propagation and so on, trust delegation and so on across domains. So it's really that it has to be pattern aware, because every pattern is working differently to each other. And it's actually the same with having observability. So we need some kind of clear tracing and logging stuff according to the different styles or interaction patterns to make it really clear what has happened there. This leads actually to this sentence that we really have to make clear that federated platforms must be pattern aware, not just proxies. So we really have to make clear what is actually in use in the organization to provide this kind of platform. When we look on this from an EA perspective, I would say it's like having some kind of diagram. I used here Archimate to make it proper, because with customers we work a lot in the TOGAF context, and it makes quite clear that we need a certain kind of things from the API provider side, going over having a platform engineering team to make clear that there's a shared infrastructure, and we will have, and this is one of the things, this is just some kind of outlook, a pure way of thinking that every domain team, or however we call it, needs a specific type of gateway according to their interaction patterns they already have. So it's a lot of things to come about and to make clear what is actually needed. And here we are not talking about this, we have a control plane and it's running above everything we have already. No, it's just like looking at how could it look like on the team level when we provide a platform for the teams. So to end this all up, API interaction patterns and federated API management, we have different types of interaction. We have a possibility to use the interaction canvas. We have a possibility to describe our platform with the platform canvas. And the most and foremost important thing is, before you federate further, federate with intent. So it's really clear where you want to go, because federation is not about buying a tool. It's about creating the mindset for the future, because future will change a lot. Thank you for listening, and goodbye.